Hi, this is Julie with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make Kumihimo beaded clusters. So that is what you see here in this example. And you'll notice that I've got a spiral Kumihimo braid that has no beads, and then I've got these little clusters throughout, which are beaded, which is really fun. And if you're curious about some of the other techniques shown in this necklace, I do have another video showing you actually how to do the filigree accents. But first I want to show you a couple other Kumihimo examples. So these are all standard 8 warp Kumihimo braids, including this one here. And they use the exact same technique. It's just a matter of where you decide to place your beads. So that's really one of the fun things about Kumihimo is it's the same basic process over and over again. It's just you really change the look of what you're doing based upon the beads you choose, the size, and the placement. And that's no different when you're doing Kumihimo bead clusters as well. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, if you're completely new to Kumihimo, please check out our other videos showing you really how to get started with Kumihimo. They'll show you how to actually go ahead and cut your threads, wind your bobbins, and stuff like that. But for the purpose of this video, I already have some of that done. So it is a standard 8 warp braid. Now I want to get a spiral effect going like I have in my example, and to do that you're going to have 2 different colors of cords, 4 strands each, and you're going to have the same color opposite each other. So you see I've got the 2 teal to the left and the right of the 16 as well as the left and the right of the 32, and same with the purple, so they're opposite each other. And I've already gone ahead and pre-strung my beads and wound my bobbin, and I've got my knot with my weight. And if any of this is confusing, please do go back and watch some of our other videos showing you the basics of Kumihimo. So to do this, we are going to just start by doing a basic Kumihimo 8 warp braid without beads. Now, remember, your beads are on here, but you don't have to use them. So we're going to go the strand that's to the left of the 16 with the card facing us at 32 up top, up to the left of the top strand, and the right cord down to the right. And then we're going to rotate it counterclockwise, left, up to the left, right, down to the right. Rotate. And then I like to always just go ahead and secure my cords as I go and make sure my tension is nice and even. So left, up to the left, right cord, down to the right. Rotate. Left up, right down, rotate. And this is all there is to doing a Kumihimo braid. It's really, really simple. It's very relaxing. You don't have to think too much. You can watch TV as you're doing it. You can talk with friends. As you can see, I'm just talking in this video because it doesn't require a lot of concentration. So you're going to do this for however long you want your length of braid to be that does not have beads. And whenever you want to pause, just make sure you take 1 strand up. Here again, left to the left. So left from the bottom, up to the left of the top. And then you can put it down like this because you've got 3 strands up top. And you'll know when you come back to it, and you're like, oh, where did I leave off? Wherever those 3 strands are, they're going to be at top, and you're going to take the right down to the right. So I want to show you something in this braid here. I try to do it evenly in terms of my spacing. So you can either just measure it with a ruler, you can just have a little piece of paper that's this long, you can do whatever to be able to get the nice even spacing here. But you'll notice my braid here is starting to develop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep braiding here off camera until I get about this much braided, and then I'm going to show you how to make your first cluster. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back and we'll make a cluster. Done a little bit of a braid here, and I'm going to create my first cluster. I'm going to show you that technique, and then I'm going to just give you some tips just in general about when you are using beads with Kumihimo or you are making these clusters. So got my 3 strands at the top. I'm just going to pull this one down to the right, rotate, and now I'm going to take my first bead and I'm going to slip it down the strand and tuck it over that purple warp that's closest to it. So it's just going to get tucked under. And you want it to catch. And then on this strand that's on the right, again, I'm going to slide a bead down into that well and catch it under that warp that it's closest to of the opposite color. So it was the basic same technique that we do of left up to left, right down to right, but we just slipped a bead in there. And now we're going to rotate. We're going to do the same thing here with the purple. So we're just going to slip a bead under. And this too is the same technique for beaded Kumihimo if you were going to do a solid piece of beaded Kumihimo. There's no difference. So I slipped a bead under both of those. Again, I'm going to rotate, pull that bead up, let it slide down, make sure it catches, and continue placing your strand into the slot where it belongs. Slide down another bead. Always work on your tension. Make sure your warps are nice and tight. There we go, we slipped a bead. What is nice about beaded Kumihimo is you don't need as many beads, so you can use some more specialty beads sometimes. You know, whatever you might be doing, you can think about, oh, I'm only going to need maybe 50 beads or something like that versus 150. All right, so let me do one up to the top here. So slip that guy under, he's catching. I'm going to pull that strand so it's secured. I know where I left off, and now let's flip it and see what we have. So you can see we're getting a little cluster here, and it is spiraling like our threads. Now, at this point, you just decide how many do you want to do. So you see I've got 1, 2, 3, and then on this guy here, for each spiral I did 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that made a cluster that's about that size. You can make it as big or as small as you want, but I am going to do the 4 here for the example. So we'll call that 4 beads tall. Not sure if there's a proper term for it, but I think that works fine. So again, I'm just going to slip another bead. Let's see, I need another teal, or this pretty green. And the whole time you're making sure that your beads stay put where you want them to be by catching under those warps. Okay, rotate. I think this might be my last purple one for this cluster. Let's see. Yes, so I'll just finish it with this one. So you want it to be even. Okay, let's see. We have a pretty little cluster, and it is a little long. If you wanted it to be a bit more ball-like, you could have stopped 1 bead sooner for each, so it would have been 3 beads tall. Okay, so rotate. And now to finish your cluster, just go ahead and continue braiding without beads. So even though your beads are still wound on your bobbins, you're just not going to worry about them like before. So. And this does go a bit faster than beaded Kumihimo if you're going to do a solid piece of beaded Kumihimo. Just because you're not having to catch all those beads each and every time. See what we've got. So you see you've got the braid to start with that's not beaded, then you got the cluster, and then you got the braid again. I'm going to just do a little bit more braiding, and then I'm going to pull it off so you can see this example a little bit better, and then I'll try to share some tips. Okay, I'm going to pull it off because this is just a sample for the video. What I like to do when I pull something like this off, if this was a finished piece, I would take my weight, I'd pinch my braid right up at the top, take my weight, pull this down a little bit, and grip the top right there so that my braid stays in place until I'm ready to finish it and attach the cord ends. So I'm just going to pull this off. and then you can see what we've got. So we've got the braid, we've got the cluster, and then we've got the continuation of the braid right here. So a couple things to note. One is this weight is probably a little bit heavy for this particular project, which is this project here. You can see how it's really pulling the S-Lon, and I noticed it as I was doing this. So weights come in different sizes. I would recommend a smaller one if you are doing this S-Lon, because you'll see that my braid is really getting pulled and elongated, whereas here where I did a lighter weight is more uniform, it's tighter, it's not got this pulled look. So that's one thing to note. Another thing to note is if you are doing these clusters, you don't want to start with a cluster, you always want to start with just a plain braid. And that's so that when you go to attach your cord ends, you can really fit the braid into the cord end. And you're not worried about the beads trying to fit into a cord end, which could be nearly impossible depending on the size of the beads that you use. And speaking of the size of the beads you use, you'll want to take that into consideration too. You'll want to make sure that whatever material you're using is something that you can string a bead onto. S-Lon works great. You might have a little bit more of a challenge if you're using something like satin rat tail. So keep that in mind. And then also keep in mind the size of your beads, because if they're too big, when you start to do a cluster, they're not going to fit through this hole. So most beads on the market are going to be fine, but if you want to do something really big and chunky, you might run into trouble, because you'll see this is not that big of a single bead, but the cluster ends up this wide. And then you'll see I've got a ton of bobbins here, and they're all a little bit different. So I've got big ones, small ones, I've got ones that are discolored. Bobbins and the disc you can use over and over and over again. I've probably used these for 3 years at least. So that's something that's kind of nice. And you'll notice that there's a little bit of tape in here. If you are using something like S-Lon, which is really thin, and it pulls out of the bobbin too easily, which just does happen, especially if you have a lot of beads on it and it creates extra weight. Just take a piece of tape, tape your end to the bobbin itself, and then close it, and that will create a nice secure anchoring for it. So those are a couple tips that apply to beaded Kumihimo, as well as this technique where we are making Kumihimo bead clusters. So it's a really fun technique. Kumihimo braiding is very fun. We have a lot of videos showing you different ways of finishing the braid, showing you really in more detail how to do the basic 8 warp braid, how to do beaded Kumihimo, how to do kits. These are kits that we have. They're exclusive from beadaholique.com, and we actually have videos showing you how to do these entire bracelets, so that's kind of fun. So if that is something that is of interest to you, please do check out all those videos as well. There's a wealth of knowledge there. You can really use them as a resource. But I do hope you enjoyed this video here on how to make Kumihimo bead clusters, and have fun. Enjoy it. Kumihimo is a great technique for making jewelry.